Welcome to another HanDrinksSolo wine info video, this time on Spookfontein's Cabernet Sauvignon 2018. Now this Cab Sauv is a wine of origin Hemel-en-Aarde Upper Valley. So if you're a wine producer producing Pinot Noir or Chardonnay from Hemel-en-Aarde, you want to stamp that appellation as large on the label as your graphic designer will allow you to. Because even though I think the first bottle from Hemel-en-Aarde was bottled by Hamilton Russell in 1981, so that's only 40 years that the region has been producing wines. But in that short space of time, they've managed to create an incredible reputation for themselves internationally for Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. But what I've been trying to prove over the last year or so with some of the wines in the HanDrinksSolo Club is that there are increasingly some delectable Cabernet Sauvignons coming out of the region as well. And you might say, so what, Han? It is literally the most widely planted cultivar on the entire planet. So statistically speaking, of course, there are going to be one or two decent cabs to come from Hemel-en-Aarde. But perhaps in order for you to get why I think this is a point worth making, we need to investigate the widely agreed upon pros and cons of a grape like Cabernet Sauvignon. So we know that just like a banana or a pear or an orange, the ripeness of the fruit affects the flavor of the fruit, and the grapes are no different. Eat a banana when it's really green and all of a sudden your teeth are covered in powdery tannins and it smells a little bit like a cheap pinotage. But wait too long until the banana goes black and the fruit flies begin to gather and it becomes sickly sweet and pungent. It's like being pepper sprayed very, very gently by a fairy who's been baking overly sweet fudge while riding a sweaty marmoset. I mean, I wouldn't go so far as to call it traumatic, but it's definitely enough to make you wheeze. And Cabernet Sauvignon is no different because it just has these zones where it's really not nice to drink. And a lot of the time, the reason it's not nice to drink has to do with ripening. Because Cabernet Sauvignon is a grape with very, very thick skins and it ripens very slowly. And it needs loads and loads of sun to get the fruit beyond the green, tanniny, herby stage into a place where it's displaying cassis and black cherry and red cherry. Now, for the most part, South Africa has no shortage of sun, and Cabernet Sauvignon can ripen pretty much anywhere. But this brings us to the second problem with Cabernet Sauvignon. The Cabernet Sauvignon vine grows very vigorously, which means that it produces lots and lots of leaves very quickly. So if you're in a cool region where you need all the sun you can get, you now have these leaves growing over the grapes as they're trying to ripen, and in fact cuts off any sunshine that might get through to the fruit. What viticulturalists will do in order to try and solve this problem is to cut back the green leaves and leave the grape bunches exposed so that they can ripen. But the problem of ripening doesn't end there for South African vines, because despite all the sunshine and diligent viticulture, we also have something called the leaf roll virus. It is a virus that is found around the world, but we have it particularly badly, and it can affect a vine's ability to ripen fruit. Honestly, as far as the South African vineyard is concerned, when it comes to leaf roll virus,
we're the fucking worst.
So let's put all of this together. What you have is a very, very slow ripening grape in a region that is already fairly cool. Then you have a very vigorous canopy, so a vine that grows lots of leaves that can cover up the bunches of grapes as they're trying to ripen. And thirdly, there's leaf roll virus. So what happens is when you combine slow ripening grapes, a cool region, lazy viticulturalist, and leaf roll virus, you have a living, breathing, real idea that Hemel-en-Aarde cannot ripen Cabernet Sauvignon. And probably part of the problem is that there are enough unripe Cabernet Sauvignons out there coming out of Hemel-en-Aarde in order to make critics feel like they are justified in their skepticism. Which is why this Spookfontein Cabernet Sauvignon is so important. Now, you can always tell an unripe Cabernet Sauvignon because of a number of factors. First of all, the tannins taste kind of green and unripe, not unlike an unripe banana that I mentioned earlier. Secondly, they are herbal or herbaceous factors. There's herbaceous factors like green pepper or capsicum, and then there's herbal notes like eucalyptus and nettle leaf. And these factors, if they totally overpower any element of fruit in the wine, you then describe it as something like leafy or green, and it's largely seen as a viticultural fault. Which brings us again to Spookfontein's Cabernet Sauvignon 2018. As you drink it, you'll taste some amazing berry notes, cherry, blackcurrant, and there is a hint of kind of eucalyptus, a little bit of a leafy note, but it is purely adding support to an already well-developed fruit core. And then to round it off, there's the ever so subtle hint of oak. And what you really have then is these three elements working together, a herbaceous, pleasant intrigue that is adding dynamics to the fruit core, and then it's polished by a touch of oak. Really a lovely little bottle. The other thing that makes this bottle important is that it provides an alternative to the big icon-style Stellenbosch and Paarl Cabernet Sauvignons that we are largely known for internationally. And some of these Stellenbosch Cabernet Sauvignon are world-class, incredible wines, but not something you can necessarily drink every day of the week. This Spookfontein Cabernet Sauvignon has a delightfully delicate footprint. And I think you'll find that it has all the character traits of Cabernet Sauvignon, and yet it's supremely approachable even in its youth. So if you're a die-hard Cabernet Sauvignon fan, I would love to hear your thoughts on this, not least of all how it compares to some of your favorites from our more prominent cab regions like Stellenbosch and Paarl. Feel free to ask any questions you have about viticulture or about Cabernet Sauvignon or about Spookfontein. You can leave comments in the comment section or leave a review at the bottom of the wine info page, and I will do my best to get back to you with any answers I may have found.